there was something more going on in Hollywood at that time than just whether people weren't in favor of the war. I remember that.
Mr. President, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And let's just jump right into it. We are meeting under fairly unusual circumstances. Technically, 2 weeks ago, it would have been your 112th birthday. And I'm just curious how you feel about being here the way that you have been brought here with AI and your thoughts on this technology.
It's certainly different than when I was last here. But I have to say, I'm impressed by how much progress has been made in just a few decades. As for how I made it here, that's a long story. It involves some advanced technology and some divine intervention. Let's just say that God works in mysterious ways.
Indeed. And I'm glad we're able to chat. And so I wanted to get your opinion on a number of topics. Most recently, the world was hit with a global pandemic. It cost us millions of lives. People criticized the way the government went about handling the situation. I'm curious, if you were in office today, how would you have handled COVID-19?
The COVID-19 pandemic was a difficult challenge, and my heart goes out to all those who have been affected by it. If I were president during this time, I would have prioritized protecting the health and safety of the American people while also balancing the needs of the economy. Mm-hmm. I believe in limited government intervention. So I would have encouraged voluntary measures such as social distancing and wearing masks rather than mandating them. I would have also worked closely with medical experts and the private sector to ramp up testing,
right,
develop effective treatments, and accelerate the development and distribution of vaccines. Ultimately, it's important to trust in the resilience and ingenuity of the American people, mm-hmm, and to work together as a country to overcome this challenge.
So speaking of working together, the politics under former President Trump were perhaps some of the most divisive in recent history. And I'm curious what your thoughts were on his tenure and him also reusing a little bit of your slogan, "Let's make America great again."
While it's true that the "Make America Great Again" slogan used by President Trump echoes the sentiment of my own campaign slogan, it's important to remember that words and slogans are only part of the equation.
Yeah.
What's most important is how those words are put into action and whether they truly represent the best interests of the American people. Ultimately, it's up to each individual leader to make their own decisions and govern in a way that they believe is best for the country.
Yeah.
As a former president, I respect the office and the authority that comes with it, and I would encourage all of our leaders to prioritize the well-being of the American people and uphold the values and principles that have made our country great.
Understandable, and I see you haven't lost your knack for diplomacy. But I want to know, what do you think of the current state of the GOP today?
Well, I'm concerned about the direction the Republican Party has taken in recent years. Mm-hmm. The GOP has always stood for certain principles such as limited government, individual freedom, and fiscal responsibility. However, I see some of those values being compromised or abandoned altogether. Mm-hmm. I believe it's important for the Republican Party to remain true to its principles and to represent the interests of all Americans, not just a select few. It's also important to remember that the strength of our democracy comes from a healthy exchange of ideas and a willingness to work together, even when we disagree. So I would encourage the GOP to return to its roots and focus on building a more inclusive and diverse party that can appeal to a broad range of voters.
Right.
We must remember that in a democracy, no one party has all the answers, and we must work together to find solutions to the challenges we face.
That was beautifully said. Thank you for sharing. Now I want to switch to a little bit of a lighter note, less politics.
I thought we were just getting started.
What is something that people don't know about you?
Well, there is one thing that I've never shared with anyone. It's about the time I met an alien. It was back in the 80s during my second term in office.
Oh my God.
I was at Camp David walking through the woods when I saw a bright light in the sky. I thought it was just a shooting star, but then it started getting closer and closer until it was right above me. I don't remember much after that, to be honest. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in a room with a small green-skinned creature. It had these big black eyes and was staring at me intently.
What?
I wasn't sure what to do, so I just started talking to it. But I wasn't sure if anyone would believe me, but with all these balloons and such, I figured, why not tell you now?
Oh, gosh, I wish we had more time. I have so many questions. I suppose since we only have time for one more, what would you change about the U.S. today, if anything? Maybe your message for the American people.
If there was one thing I could change about the U.S. today, it would be to foster a greater sense of unity and common purpose among all Americans. Throughout my presidency, I am worked to bring people together and to promote a sense of shared values and goals, even in the face of our differences. Today, I see too much division and animosity fueled by partisan politics, identity politics, and other factors. I believe that we are all Americans, first and foremost, and that we must work together to overcome our differences and build a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. This means embracing the values of freedom, democracy, and individual responsibility that have made our country great, and working together to address the challenges we face, from economic inequality to climate change to global security threats. We must remember that our strength as a nation comes from our unity and our shared commitment to the values that have made us great.
That was a beautiful message to part with. I want to thank you again for joining me.
It was my pleasure. Happy President's Day, and may God bless America.
And I want to thank everyone for listening in. Happy President's Day.
So was this my first radio cast?
Yes, sir. Podcast.
Oh, okay. Wow.
As a reminder, the interview you just heard was completely fictitious. The intent of this video was not to spread misinformation, but to prove what is possible with the technology today. First, ChatGPT and Bing Chat assumed the identity of Ronald Reagan. It searched through the data that it was aware of to recreate potential answers that he would give if he was being interviewed today. None of these are actual opinions of President Ronald Reagan or myself. This is just a demonstration of what these AI tools are capable of. His voice was replicated using 11 labs and samples from YouTube interviews. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would it be? In an interesting way, the answer to that question is now possible by going back and forth with these AI tools. Thanks for listening.